What happens when a senator asks a simple question about America's war strategy, and the Defense Secretary refuses to give a direct answer? The exchange quickly turned into one of the hearing's most heated confrontations.
In my assessment, there was no imminent threat to the United States that justified the president using his Article II powers, and there was insufficient preparation to make sure that we had the right troops, the right capability deployed. There used to be a consensus in national security that America should only go to war when there's an imminent threat to our national security, when all other options have been exhausted, and when we have clear objectives and a plan for how it ends. As General Kane testified, the military was given 3 clear goals: sink the Navy, attack and destroy the ballistic missile launchers, and degrade their defense industrial base, and you've accomplished those. But President Trump celebrated regime change after saying that regime change was the real goal. And our NATO allies have delivered. They have allowed overflight. They have allowed projection of force despite not being consulted. You said just a few moments ago, Mr. Secretary, we control the strait. But it's clear that reopening the Strait of Hormuz for commercial traffic eludes us, in no small part because Iran retains a robust stockpile of cheap, lethal Shahed drones, and they are getting help from our adversaries in rebuilding them. What is your plan for reopening the Strait of Hormuz, Mr. Secretary?
I would just note that the majority of your question was highly disingenuous and loaded with suggestions that I very much don't agree with. From the beginning,
the hearing had just shifted from debating military strikes to a much tougher question: what comes next? Senator Chris Coons wasn't asking about the operation itself. He wanted to know the administration's plan for what happens after it.
Please feel free, sir, to pick any one of those
From the
things.
beginning, we've been very clear about the military objectives and
Yes.
the underlying strategic objective, which is preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
Yes.
Take, for example, the fact that Iranians' conventional Navy, they had aircraft carriers with Shahed drones on them before this started. They had full-on destroyers and battleship capabilities, none of which they have anymore. And
Did the Iranian Navy have aircraft carriers?
Iranian Navy had 3 drone aircraft carriers. The Iranian Navy
they
had 11
launch
submarines.
platforms for drones, sure.
They had 11 submarines.
And you've
They had
sunk
a
all of the
terror
regular Navy. Great, good.
They retain fast boat capabilities, which they've always had. We understand that, which we can control for and will. We've degraded almost completely their defense industrial base capabilities. The idea that they control anything, you can terrorize something, you can hold it at issue with piracy, as I've talked about at the Pentagon podium time and time again. That doesn't mean you control it. We control what goes in and out, and we control whether or not we have to restart conflict. The president does as well.
Mr.
So
Secretary,
we're the ones that will manage where this goes in the future, and they have very limited ability to set the tempo or respond to it, and that gives the president a lot of options to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon.
The secretary defended the military campaign as a success. But Coons argued that battlefield victories alone wouldn't answer the economic and security questions facing the United States and its allies.
The connection between their ability to close the Strait of Hormuz using fast boats and Shahed drones and our strategic goal, shared broadly, to prevent them from ever having a usable nuclear weapon is utterly unclear to me. And my question was, what's the plan for reopening the Strait of Hormuz to commercial traffic, given
shared broadly but
skyrocketing
never
prices?
executed. Shared broadly but never executed because previous administration didn't have the willingness to actually do what it would take. And when Iran was at its weakest moments following the 12-day war, but still wanted the pursuit of a nuclear capability, President Trump made the courageous decision to go at their conventional umbrella and shield, which they were using to protect their nuclear program, which we knew came with threats and branches and sequels.
My concern, Mr. Secretary, is that you've achieved a series of tactical successes, but are on the verge of a strategic loss because we are now negotiating.
I just think it's so foolish. Here we are in a committee in the United States Senate, 74 days in, and you're talking about strategic loss. We have the ability to defeat a 47-year threat of a pursuit of a nuclear weapon. We have more leverage than we've ever had. We've had incredible battlefield successes, and you're talking about a strategic loss, cloaked in disingenuous questions.
Mr. Secretary,
this is how you undercut efforts that could otherwise and are otherwise being very effective.
I am not your enemy, sir. I am not your adversary. I share your goal of preventing Iran from ever having a usable nuclear weapon. To finish my sentence, control of the Strait of Hormuz, the ability to degrade our partners and allies' gas and oil production capabilities through cheap drones, The ability to harass and harry commercial shipping remains in Iran's hands. And their demands are that we recognize sovereignty for them over the Strait of Hormuz, which I believe our president's rejected, you've rejected, I reject. But my question remains, how do we reopen the Strait of Hormuz to commercial shipping? If we control it, how do we reopen it? And your average American is seeing this at the gas pump every single day as the cost of gas continues to rise.
Senator Coons, I know that your question has not yet been responded to.
And it deserves an answer.
It does
But I
deserve
also
an
understand I'm
answer.
delaying my colleagues. But that's the question that deserves an answer, Mr. Secretary.
In the weeks following this exchange, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs General Dan Kane appeared before multiple House and Senate committees, where lawmakers from both parties repeatedly questioned the administration's strategy for reopening the Strait of Hormuz, the legal basis for the operation, and whether the military campaign had a clearly defined end state. During those hearings, Pentagon officials acknowledged that although Iranian conventional naval capabilities had been significantly degraded, Iran still retained the ability to threaten commercial shipping through drones, naval mines, fast attack craft, missiles, and proxy forces. Lawmakers also questioned why commercial traffic had not fully returned to normal despite the military successes described by the administration. As the conflict continued, the administration shifted from describing the operation primarily as strikes against Iran's nuclear infrastructure to emphasizing the need to restore freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz and deter future Iranian attacks on international shipping. The State Department began encouraging allies to participate in a broader multinational maritime security coalition, while the Pentagon confirmed that protecting commercial shipping would require an extended U.S. military presence in the region. By July 2026, Defense Secretary Hegseth told the Senate that the conflict had already cost approximately $37.5 billion, prompting a request for additional emergency defense funding. Senators from both parties questioned the growing financial cost, the absence of a clear timeline for ending operations, and whether tactical battlefield victories had translated into lasting strategic gains. The administration maintained that preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon and ensuring freedom of navigation remained its primary objectives, even as diplomacy with Tehran continued intermittently alongside military operations. The exchange itself revealed a fundamental difference in how military success should be measured. Senator Coons acknowledged that American forces had achieved significant battlefield successes against Iranian military infrastructure, but questioned whether those tactical victories had produced the broader strategic outcomes that had been promised. His concern was that destroying military assets alone does not guarantee long-term regional stability, secure international shipping, or a lasting reduction in future threats. Instead, he argued that military operations should ultimately be judged by whether they produce sustainable political and economic security. Secretary Pete Hegseth strongly rejected that assessment. He argued that the administration had accomplished exactly what it intended by severely degrading Iran's conventional military capabilities and weakening the protective umbrella surrounding its nuclear program. From his perspective, those battlefield successes dramatically increased American leverage while limiting Iran's ability to dictate future events. He maintained that the United States, not Iran, would determine the pace and direction of any future military or diplomatic developments. One of the most important moments of the hearing centered on the Strait of Hormuz itself. Coons repeatedly returned to a practical question that directly affects the global economy. If the United States controls the military environment, how will commercial shipping safely resume? The question reflected a broader concern that military superiority alone does not automatically restore confidence among shipping companies, insurers, energy markets, and international trading partners. Even limited threats from drones, mines, or small attack boats can significantly disrupt one of the world's most important energy corridors. The discussion also highlighted two different ways of evaluating national security policy. Hegseth emphasized measurable military achievements, arguing that Iran's conventional capabilities had been substantially reduced and that American deterrence had been strengthened. Coons focused instead on the long-term consequences of the conflict, suggesting that strategic success requires stable shipping lanes, confident allies, manageable energy prices, and a credible diplomatic path that prevents future escalation. Those perspectives are not necessarily incompatible, but they prioritize different measures of success. Another striking feature of the hearing was the increasingly personal tone of the exchange. Hegseth characterized several of Coons' questions as unfairly negative, while Coons reminded the Secretary that congressional oversight is intended to examine difficult questions rather than simply affirm executive decisions. That interaction reflected the constitutional role of Congress in scrutinizing military operations, particularly when they involve significant financial costs, international security, and the possible expansion of armed conflict. The hearing also underscored the changing nature of modern warfare. Even after major naval assets and military infrastructure are destroyed, relatively inexpensive technologies such as drones, anti-ship missiles, cyber capabilities, and proxy forces can continue threatening international commerce. That reality means military victories must often be followed by sustained diplomatic engagement, intelligence cooperation, multinational security partnerships, and continued deterrence if strategic objectives are to be fully achieved. Looking back, the issues raised during this hearing have only become more significant as the conflict evolved. The debate was never simply about one military operation or one shipping lane. It was about how military force should support broader national objectives, how tactical victories should be converted into lasting strategic advantages, and how governments balance military power with diplomacy, alliance management, and economic stability. Those questions continue to shape U.S. policy toward Iran and the broader Middle East, ensuring that the discussion begun in this hearing remains highly relevant today. The hearing ultimately demonstrated that battlefield success and strategic success are not always the same thing. While military operations can create opportunities, lasting stability depends on what follows: secure shipping, effective diplomacy, strong alliances, and a clear long-term strategy. Whether viewers agree more with Senator Coons' emphasis on strategic planning or Secretary Hegseth's confidence in military deterrence, the exchange highlighted one of the central challenges of modern national security: converting operational victories into durable peace and regional stability.